Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 16. I know we're almost there. Yeah, you've put up with me for 16 episodes. Well, 15. This will be the 16th one so far. So, this one I think had gotten an awful lot of interest in it, and I can see that just starting, we have 8 viewers already, and it's only 30 seconds in. So I feel I may as well stop rambling for people who are into this. So tonight I have the creator of one of the probably the most used tools in the genealogy industry at the moment, DNA Painter. It's Jonny Perl.
Hi, everyone.
So hello, Jonny.
Hi, Daniel.
How are you?
I'm well, thanks. Yeah, nice to be talking to you.
Same to you. I mean, you've already amassed an audience and we're not even a minute in. So, I mean, this has gone quite well already. So, I figure we may as well get started. So, for anyone that mightn't necessarily know who you are, could you do a little introduction?
Certainly. My name is Jonny. I'm a genealogist and also a web developer. I'm probably more famous for my web development than my genealogy, which is mostly for me. So I built a website about just under 4 years ago called DNA Painter. And that was when I first took a DNA test and I had no idea what to expect from it. And when I tried to interpret the results, I was learning about DNA as I went. And I thought, I'm a freelance web developer. Why don't I build something to visualize these matches on my chromosomes? And that idea caught on quite a lot. And fast forward a few years, and it's actually kind of my job now. So that's fun. So I do that, and I started to kind of lecture a little bit, and I've met lots of very nice people. And in general, people have been very encouraging. And I live in London at the moment, and what else? I'm going to move to Wales later this year. So that's why I said at the moment. That's an exciting fact for you. And that's it.
Well, I think you'll be welcome with open arms wherever you go, be a genealogy company in Wales. So what started it all off for you?
Genealogy or DNA Painter?
Well, either or. I think everyone will be interested to see how.
Okay. Well, let's talk about genealogy because we're all interested in genealogy, I think. It's amazing how old I got to be before it really occurred to me that genealogy was something that's interesting. When I was in my teens, I lived in a town called Bedford in England, and there's a local bookseller who made these brilliant books. The first one was called Bygone Bedford, and then there was, Bedford Then and Now. Probably a lot of you listening have got these books from your town. You can see what it was like and what, the streets that and you walk around every day, you can see what they used to look like in the past. And I was completely rapt by this. And I never thought to extend it to people. I was just thinking about buildings like, oh, wow, look at that building that was on the river there. And it was demolished in 1939. How fascinating to imagine that. So I felt like that kind of did the groundwork for me. And then I think I was probably in my early 30s when I suddenly twigged that perhaps, investigating what it was like for people back then might be interesting too, and my own people at that. I think it's because no one in my family was that into genealogy, and my parents started to become interested, or certainly my mother did. And one day I had some chat with her, and she mentioned a lot of my ancestors, and I was suddenly very struck by it, and then got very, very into it, much more than she is, in fact. So that's what happened. It's about kind of 15 years ago now, I guess. I started to get really into it.
Fair enough. And seeing as you kind of brought it up at the start, what kind of started it all off for you with DNA Painter?
Well, I guess I touched on it before. I'd been really, really seriously into genealogy. When you first get the bug and you're up into the night every night, the rest of your life starts to break down, but you're just chasing these people. So I had several years of sustained fanaticism, and so it was actually because of that I went to take a DNA test, not because I really understood what I was going to get from it. I was just like, I have to try this other thing. So I tried it, and my ancestry is, I'm half Irish. My father's father was a German Jewish man. His mother was English. So my English part of my tree goes back quite far. The rest of it, obviously, slightly less far. And so when I first got the results, it wasn't like, wow, look at all these revelations or look at all these close cousins. There's a lot of people where I just didn't really know who they were. So there was a lot to get my teeth into, if you like, but very, very slowly. Because one of the things you find out when you take a DNA test is that unless you're quite lucky, or if you have maybe a specific question to be answered, you don't really get immediate answers to your questions necessarily. It's more of a kind of a slow burn kind of, okay, well, maybe these people would, okay, that's where they fit in. And 2 years later, you've extended a branch sideways on your tree. It's kind of slow. So I could see that there was a bit of a kind of gap for a website that would help people to interpret things in a more user-friendly way. And then on the other hand, I am a web developer and I didn't have a job. So those two things came together, and that's what happened.
And obviously DNA Painter, I can imagine, has quite a number of users. I think the Facebook group for DNA Painter users is coming up on 13,000.
It is, yeah. I think I've got about 100,000, not quite 100,000 registered users on the site. So it's quite popular. And of course, a lot of people who use the site don't actually register because you don't need to use, for example, the Shared Centimorgan tool, which is based on Blaine Bettinger's work. And it's a kind of nifty kind of go-to web page if you share a number of centimorgans with someone and you're wondering what that could mean. So any day when I log into Facebook, a lot of people will say, oh, just go to this website. So a lot of those people are not registered users, but they're popping by to check that out.
Oh, yeah. But I mean, you just said it yourself, like 100,000 people registered to it.
Yeah.
Like, did you ever think it was going to be that big?
Not really, but I didn't really know because I didn't know what I was doing anyway, did I? So all I knew, I was very blinkered about this. I knew that I wanted to build this for myself, and I knew that there would be enough interest in it that it was worth me not just making a little web page and editing it manually, but actually making a website where you could, doing that slightly painful heavy lifting at the beginning. So make it so you can register and make it so you can create a map and start to do stuff. And obviously it's gone off in all kinds of other directions since then, but I knew it was worth getting that far. Beyond that, I didn't really have any idea. Yeah. I mean, people have been very kind to me. I've really been welcomed with open arms. I've been doing this for many years, genealogy, but I was never, you're very kind of outgoing and you reach out to people and you talk to people all the time. I never did that at all. I was just, when I was staying up into the night, I wasn't asking questions on Facebook. I had a little notepad document and I was saying, could this be the family evidence? And I was just writing that stuff down. I was never interacting with people. I only started to interact, I think on Facebook it was in 2015. That was when I started to kind of dip my toe in the online kind of social media genealogy community. And then with DNA, I kind of had no choice because I didn't know what I was talking about. So I needed people like Donna Rutherford, who's got the Genealogy DNA UK group. I needed her to tell me what was what, So at that point, I had no choice. But yeah, people have been really, really kind and welcoming and encouraging, because loads of the stuff I've only built because other people have said, oh, well, you should do this. And then I'm like, oh, yeah, I should do this. Good idea. Thank you.
Fair enough. So, and for anyone watching, obviously, I've got plenty of questions for Jonny, but if anyone watching has any questions for Jonny that you didn't submit to me or that you felt that, right, I'm going to submit it now while it's live, please do so now so that when I'm asking Jonny all the questions that have been coming in at the end, I can do it all in one shot. So, continuing on, what resources have you found most helpful in your research?
Well, I guess irishgenealogy.ie is the big one, because for the Irish government to make all of the civil records available free, I mean, pretty much we were missing a few deaths at the beginning, I think. That's a big one for me. When I first started out, it was about having the 1901 and 1911 censuses available. But yeah, over the last 2 years, that's been the big one. Also, the addition of the mother's maiden name into the English General Register Office website for England and Wales has been amazing. What else? Obviously, I use all the website, all of the big websites, but I guess those two things strike me as the biggest kind of breakthroughs for me in the last couple of years, just because they're freely available to everyone. And I mean, particularly the Irish records. I mean, it just means that you can do speculative stuff that you can't. I mean, Scotland's people is amazing, but I can't check all of the people called Marshall who died in the 50s and 60s to see if they're my Irish Marshall family somehow. Whereas with the Irish records, you can really do that. If you want to just do a surname study of a particular place, all that information is there. It's just incredible. I don't feel as if it's really been utilized to its full potential yet, but it will.
Yeah. So, there's probably no need to ask this one, seeing as it's probably self-explanatory. But what projects or ventures are you currently pursuing?
Oh well, I mean, I can be a bit more detailed about it, I guess. I mean, DNA Painter is an ongoing thing.
Yeah.
And I know you're new to it, Daniel. So I mean, for your benefit and for anyone else's, so the reason I built the site in the first place is to do these things called chromosome maps. So your chromosome map is essentially a kind of companion piece to your kind of pedigree chart, your ancestral line. So we all work on our ancestral line, don't we? And we go sideways and we go forwards and backwards. But we know that those people in our direct line, they're the people who gave us our DNA. So when you make your chromosome map, you can figure out, which actual bits they gave you, which is fascinating. But that's only one part of DNA Painter, really. I've actually made it so that you can have your ancestral chart on DNA Painter as well, and you can visualize it in lots of quite cool ways. But the big project, obviously, is to tie those things together so that potentially a lot more things can be automated. At the moment, when you're making your chromosome map, you say, hi, these bits of DNA, they go to this ancestry, and you type their name in. I want to make it all a bit slicker than that. So you can just say, it's this couple here, and you select them from your tree. So yeah, basically a web developer's work is never done. And so I'm working on more ways to make it slicker, and also to make it be able to handle more and more data and that kind of thing. So that's my ongoing task.
Very good. Is there anything that you now know that you wish you knew when you started?
In a way, I'm glad I didn't know how bleak the picture is for Irish genealogy when I started, or maybe I'd have been put off. If you'd have told me that there were, that there were no censuses between, available in the 1860s, 70s, 80s, 90s, all that. I have actually got some collateral relatives who are in the fragments from the 1851 County Antrim census, which is incredible. But if you told me that civil registration for births only started in 1864, I didn't realize how good I had it, basically, with the English stuff. So I'm glad I didn't know that. But beyond that, just the standard stuff, as in, just because a record is available and it has the name that you want doesn't mean it's the right record. Your standard kind of beginner genealogist stuff. I was guilty of that when I started, just like lots of other people. But I think you kind of start to set your own standards. I'm sure my standards are far beneath the standards of a lot of people who might listen to this. I'm not the most, brilliant citation person ever, but I do make sure I really believe it when I do it. I don't speculate and say, well, I got this record with someone with this name in this country, so that's them, and I just put it in my tree. I don't do that anymore. Those days are gone.
Yeah. There was one instance I came across with a possible cousin of mine. Won't go into too much detail, but the tree was quite different. Not the best way at all.
Yeah, you have to learn to just take it with a pinch of salt and just start your own in that case, I think. No hard feelings.
No, I know. So what aspect of genealogy do you love the most? So like finding old photos, looking at finding ancestors in records, newspapers, learning stories, that sort of thing.
I love it when I'm able to figure something out from the smallest clue, if you know what I mean. So, for example, my father has a cousin who's very into genealogy, and he had a piece of paper that we think must have been written by my second great grandfather, who was a guy called Charles Richard Jones, who lived from 1828 until 1917. And he'd gone back and put loads of baptisms in it. And then the last one, he just said Isaac Gray was the father, and he was a solicitor somewhere near the village of so-and-so. I can't remember exactly where it was now, but he gave me the little tiny bit of information. And from that, I was actually able to then go crazy. And I found the death of this guy. He had a stone in a church. It's in a place called Lambourne, which is in Berkshire in England. And that essentially let me go back 3 or 4 more generations, because it turns out that this guy's mother had actually been his great grandmother had been married to a very rich man, and so rich and important that it was mentioned on his stone that had been archived in a book. So I didn't care that the guy was rich and amazing, rich and famous. It was more just from a tiny thread, being able to go back is always so satisfying. So that's my favorite.
I mean, I'm waiting for that like potluck to come and come and hit me right now. I could do do some, especially with my common names. I mean, like
so
you were kind of saying about Marshall in Scotland or somewhere. I'm assuming it was a common. Yeah, it was a common name. I'm assuming.
Oh yeah, of course. Massively.
Well, I've no experience with it, so well, that name anyway.
My Irish surnames are mostly pretty common, and it's hellish, isn't it? Really, because particularly with the reusing of first names.
Oh yeah, there's one. Like there somewhere in my family, there's like this 5 generations. If you go back far enough, you can find like 5 generations of Johns, and it annoys me. I mean, I do my genealogy with my mum, and I kind of saying, we can probably just stick the name John in, and you'd probably get it right somewhere, just going up and up and up.
Yeah, I have the same thing with Joseph's on my Marshall line, but what can you do? I mean, all I can say is you have to keep at it, and every 3 or 4 years. I mean, seriously, the way these breakthroughs happen is through unusual sources. Normally, the last big breakthrough I had was because someone had written a letter from New Zealand to Ohio in 1877, and it had been published in a family newsletter in the 1970s. And then someone had put that family newsletter into their genealogy website. And that letter confirmed that my great-grandmother was indeed this particular Agnes Broadfoot, part of this particular family that I'd spent years hypothesizing, but I had to wait for that one record to actually prove it. And that's not a record you'd look for unless you were doing a lot of Google searching with, with quotes around the specific phrases to find the result. So I think just leave no stone unturned and be incredibly patient. And often it is things like that. It's secondary sources. It's things that have been archived by some nice person in maybe the more recent past. I had a gravestone that had been written up by someone in the 1930s in a notebook, and I found that had been microfilmed by the Mormons, I think, and it was in the National Archives. And when I went to the graveyard, you wouldn't have been able to get that information. The stone was completely illegible. There was nothing on there, but someone had done that, So sometimes those sources, which might not seem that promising, because you think, oh, well, something written by someone in 1930 or 1975, but very valuable.
Yeah. So I like to kind of leave no stone unturned, because I mean, like, I guess it's a case of you never know where you're going to find something. But I mean, the chances just shrink and shrink and shrink. So it feels like they just shrink every time you try searching for them.
It's completely easy to become downbeat, definitely, but it's just finding a little chink of something that's going to distinguish them from the other people with similar names, isn't it? Whether it's a townland or whether it's an unusually named child or whatever you can find,
Yeah. I mean, I guess I just have to keep going.
Optimism, come on.
Yeah. What type of record do you like the most, and why?
What I like is it's not restricted to one record. I like those records where you get a little Easter egg, where you get a bonus. Yeah. So that might be a census record where you have multi-generational living that confirms a relationship that you otherwise wouldn't have been able to confirm. So particularly the 1851 English census is good for that, because some people might be in their 60s or 70s and they're a mother-in-law or something, and that binds this one family to the family you thought it was. So those are absolutely brilliant. Equally, Scottish death records, obviously, particularly if they're from 1855, when they have a bunch of extra information in them, which is incredible. What else? Sometimes there's Irish birth records. The early ones can be very, very revealing. Those are my favorites, really. It's the ones with the Easter eggs. So I guess ultimately census records are the most likely to do that, aren't there? Particularly if there's been a family with lots of children, maybe the in-laws or the uncles or people are living with certain people, and particularly in those early years of the English and Scottish censuses, that can be really, really valuable, because we're talking about people who were born in the sort of 1770s and stuff. So,
and yeah, I do agree with the census for Ireland. I mean, it's either one or other. It's either 1901, 1911. Take your pick. So
it's a tricky situation, because you know that a lot of the people of interest obviously have died. And in that generation we're trying to get back, a lot of them may have even died before 1864. So it's tough. I have made breakthroughs since the death records keep edging back, don't they? And I found people that I previously hadn't been able to find out when they died. I have made some inroads on that, so that's been really good.
Yeah. There was just kind of saying about the earlier censuses where it kind of said something like mother-in-law or something. I remember I was helping a friend with her family history, and I think this would have been possibly 2 times great-grandfather or grandmother. And they were living with their kids. And then there was this 88-year-old woman with them. And it had said mother. And I thought, okay, that works. And I found the death cert, and I think she died it was either the month after the census was taken.
Right.
Or it was very close to after the census was taken that she ended
just in time, yeah.
Just in time. And I'm kind of thinking, if she didn't live to that census, then I may not have worked out who it was.
Sure.
Because I think she had a common name, I think it was a common name in the area, like Mary O'Sullivan or something. It was something.
Right, yeah. Pretty tricky.
Yeah. But the fact that she appeared there, and then it kind of said relation to head of household, so the son was the head, and then it said, Mary O'Sullivan. I'm making up a name here. I don't know if it was that.
Sure, but that's great. Yeah.
Mary O'Sullivan, mother, or something. And I was thinking, okay, well, thank you for living.
Thank you. Yeah, I've got a lot of people who fell just the other side. A lot of people who died in 1900 or 1899.
Yeah, you'd be hitting 1820s or 1830s, and I mean, it's in Irish research. The further back you get, the difficult. So and especially the women are kind of the hidden people in records. I think it was obviously UK, England, and Wales that kind of announced that they were adding, mother's name to marriage certificates
from 2021. Yeah, so that helped people in the distant future. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it would have. Imagine if that measure had made, if that had been done. I don't know how many years ago.
Well, it's done in Scotland, right?
Yeah, now granted, if I had a Mary Smith in the family, I don't care. It would kind of be you'd have Mary Smith and not just Mary in the tree. It would be kind of adding info to that, and just probably getting it back further so that you could find who it is.
Yes, that would be lovely. Instead, I guess we have to fall back on memoirs, letters, deeds, whatever else we can get hold of. Right, that's the way it is for the Irish.
Oh yeah,
it's meant to test us and make sure that we can show our skills and our persistence. It's good.
Yeah, I mean, you're probably right, but
you have to embrace
it. Yeah, you're probably right, but I mean, for me, it's probably just a case of the records are there, and they could be kind of looking at you, going "Hi, we're here," and then I'd be looking, trying to find them. I can't see them. The record could be staring at me in the face, and I wouldn't notice it. That's kind of some days I have.
Some days,
yeah. Oh dear. Anyway, still, I asked that one. What does genealogy mean to you?
Well, some days it's kind of everything. It's the reason it's the first thing I think of in the morning, and it's the reason I exist. Other days, it's more just something there in the background. I guess it means I'm never going to be bored in my life, right? The whole thing, the classic thing with kids, I'm bored. I'm never not going to have something to do. I've always got that to do. So, and my passion for it, goes in peaks and troughs a little bit. I've had a lot of sort of busy real life stuff recently that maybe has I wouldn't say it's dulled my passion. I'm still thinking about it in the background, and still occasionally just quickly doing someone's tree and seeing if if it aligns with mine. But I'm maybe not in a kind of red hot period at the moment. But yeah, it's something that's very valuable to me because it keeps me interested. Keeps me. It feels like it's a very self-indulgent, inward-looking thing to do in some ways, but it's also, particularly if you kind of share it and share methods and techniques, it can be quite a fun, collaborative thing to do, and you're helping, if not others immediately, you're helping the people who come after you. So it feels like a good use of time to me. I know not everyone feels that way because I often bore people about it, but for me, it's great.
And just because I remember it was a debate on Twitter, kind of, and anyone else watching can join in on this, but the debate was, when you pass on, what happens to your research? Because some people were kind of saying, right, I'm going to put it on, let's say, WikiTree or something, and then it'll be preserved for like future generations to go back. And then some people are saying, I'm going to get rid of it all so that everyone else after me can have the fun of finding it. I'm not kidding. Like, some people were kind of saying, right, I'm going to, lose my research so that, everyone else can have the joy of finding things and getting back.
If you were going to do that, that's a nice reason to do it, isn't it? As opposed to, you can imagine some people saying, "Oh, I've worked hard for this. Why should I give it away?" If they're saying, "Oh, and I want someone else to have the fun," then that's a more reasonable reason, isn't it? I personally, I hope that I will make the effort to get it all into WikiTree. A lot of the people at WikiTree did mine for me, which is very nice of them, early this year. But I can imagine if all else fails, I would at least have a box of stuff to go to the Society of Genealogists in London, because I know a lot of people have done that. They have a sort of item there. But yeah, I guess I proliferate it in quite a few places. It's a good point. What if there's no electricity tomorrow? Where's my tree? Have I got it printed out? I've got my direct line printed out. I think I've got 5,500 people in my ancestry tree. I'm a fanatical collateral lines genealogist, and that's for me and my other half. So we have a kind of joint tree, and I've gone back, on all of the lines and a lot sideways, just to make that DNA stuff as nice as possible. Because sometimes you find people and they're in your tree, and you're like, yeah, that's because I worked for this. So yeah, I haven't got that anywhere else. I haven't got it, on paper, because it seems a bit weird I could print it out now, but I might have 100 more people next month. But that's an interesting thought. But no, I would want to pass it on, because sure, some of it's been really fun to do, but some of it's been really backbreaking and quite exhausting. And I don't know if anyone else could have found that Agnes Broadfoot, my second great grandmother. I'm not sure anyone else could have found her, because it was a continual work over a period of about 10 years. So yeah, I'd want to pass that on.
Oh yeah, I've only been doing this 4 years, and sorry for anyone that would like to, lose the work for the future generations. I'd like to keep it, because there was one person I remember. He's like my great granduncle or something, and just trying to find him was a chore, because the surname I was looking for was Loftus, Loftus.
Yeah.
And yeah, I tried every other variant you could think of, and I couldn't find it. And then I see his name is Thomas. So I just doing a plain Thomas search would be taxing enough. So
I imagine a few pages to spoon through. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think I can't remember how I did it. It was either wildcard search or something, but when I found the document, it had clearly said the spelling I just said a minute ago, but was transcribed as Lefthus.
Right. Helpful.
When I looked at the document, I was kind of thinking, how could you get that from that? Like, it was written clearly, but yet was transcribed poorly. I mean, I reported the error, and hopefully it's been fixed. And I'm glad I saved the cert because I can't find it now.
Right. Well, that's a good reason to use multiple sites sometimes. I know a lot of people think, for example, for the English censuses, people like to find my past transcriptions of the censuses rather than the other ones. So yeah, there's many different. Well, obviously get the original record if you can, but you got to find it first, as you say.
Yeah. So, what advice would you give to a young person starting out in genealogy?
Enjoy it. I mean, I wish I was younger starting out, to be honest. And although when I was your age, what do we have? We didn't have the internet very much. I think it just about the World Wide Web had just been invented when I was your age. And yeah, obviously to review censuses, you'd have to, look at CD-ROMs or go to the archives and look at the papers. So yeah, you have this fantastic playground of stuff that you can potentially access from home, which is brilliant. So I guess just hold yourself to as high standards as possible in terms of have you really proved what it is you're finding. Everyone develops their research skills at their own pace, and in their own way. But obviously, we've all seen. We all joke about some of the trees we see, and obviously the people who make those trees. Some of them are young, some of them are old, some of them middle aged. It's the important thing is to have standards that you're not just going to randomly choose someone with the same name and suddenly say, oh yeah, they're in Kentucky this year, and then they were in Dublin, and they're in France. It's definitely the same person. Just you got to use your intellectual capacity to put sensible stuff in. But yeah, I just say enjoy it. I mean, what a great hobby for anyone to have of any age. I mean,
yeah. So, with times changing and more young people getting into genealogy, do you, in your opinion, think there is a sufficient outlet for young genealogists to express themselves and just connect with other people their age? And
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if there is or not. I mean, I personally connect with people on social media, and I know that you're obviously pioneering some of these things yourself. You're famous for it, and I don't know I don't exactly know whether all people are on the same platforms. Facebook is famous for being a sort of older person's platform these days, isn't it? Some younger people use it, but it's not the hot thing anymore. It's kind of perfect for someone with my needs. I don't, there's an app, there's a website. You can set up specific user groups. A lot of people are on it. That's great. Of course, there are people who aren't on it who I'm sure I could learn lots of valuable things from. But it's great. But meeting in person obviously is even better if you can connect to people. And obviously I've been to a lot of shows where you get to meet people, and that's a great thing to do. And it's been a bit painful not being able to do that over the last couple of years. To turn that question back at you, do you feel as if it's important for you to engage with people who are about your age, or obviously you interact with people all ages, don't you, on Twitter and stuff? But do you feel a special kind of bond and connection with people who are in their sort of late teens, early 20s, who are maybe going through the same kinds of issues as you, looking things, or what's your feeling?
Well, there's two people I know definitely, I hope are still watching this and I haven't bored them to death. You know who you are. I'm in the Discord server with you. But I was having a chat with some people last about this, and kind of we're in a Discord server, and one of the people, Colin, he's the owner, thank you, of the Gen Z Genealogy Discord server. And I mean, with Discord, you need an actual link to join it. Now, I'm a newbie to this, so if I'm wrong, please tell me. But you kind of need a link to it, and
right,
you can't. It's not like Twitter where you could sort of get a look into the tweet. Like if you were signed out on Twitter and you went to my page, you could see a certain amount, but then obviously it would ask you to sign in.
Right.
And then with Discord, it's not like that. So I mean,
Discord's more private, right?
Yeah, it's more private. So there are plenty of young genealogists out there, and I know Jill and Colin, who are probably watching still now, they're kind of one of, I think, 84 as of now, 80 something in the server right now, and that's
Right. That's
dotted
a good
around the
number.
world. Yeah, and I mean, it's just a case there needs, in my opinion, I know I'm going to bore people, I know, but kind of there just
So
kind
how
of
about
needs
that?
to be, people like my age, like getting on Twitter, like with Twitter chats. That's how I've made most of my connections.
Sure.
That's how you say I'm well known. But kind of, if they're not in something public like that, then probably you're not. People will probably say, "Oh, but not many young people do it." They do, but they're not on the platforms like Twitter or
Right.
something like that, where people can actually see them and
Sure.
interact with them easier. Um, and I mean, I don't know. It's just something I think needs to happen, and I'm happy to teach any Gen Z genealogists how to use Twitter like I do, but
Sure.
in time.
I mean, I think people of all age have got their own kind of taste for platforms, don't they? Like some people will
That
say to me,
too.
well, I don't do Facebook. You can imagine some people might be put off by Discord because maybe it's slightly more technical. But I guess the wider question, and I think there are two answers to it that are completely valid. One is, why don't we all interact with each other anyway, whatever age we are, because I can learn stuff from you and you can learn stuff from me, etc. And the other is, yeah, sure, why not have a platform to make it clear that this is a really interesting hobby for younger people to have, so that younger people who come to it don't look at it and say, oh, well, that's just older people. So there's a lot of value in that, I can see. And obviously Twitter lists, if you could make a Twitter list of all of the the younger genealogists, I'm sure you could get a reasonable number, but you're saying that there's a proportion who just aren't on it because it's not for them. So it's tricky.
Yeah. I mean, like one of my Hidden Branch colleagues had joined Twitter because they had seen me. They had heard from someone in a Discord server that I was on Twitter, and then
Right.
they joined Twitter, interact with me. And I mean, that's another thing. If there aren't like role models or something like that, or someone that they see that's that is their own age, I have Gen Z genealogist in my header and in my bio,
Sure.
so people know kind of I'm probably below the age of 24, or something like that. And
Is that the rule? Yeah, I don't know these rules myself, but yeah, cool.
I think Gen Z is like 1997, 1996 or 7,
Okay.
one of them, up
Right.
to 2010. So kind of 24 or 5 below. But I kind of make it known that I am probably younger than people think. And I mean, like, I think I'm just trying to be like there for like people my own age that
Yeah.
kind of think, oh, well, there's, older people or kind of, there's no one my age on Twitter doing it. I'm there and I'm there for a reason. Like Twitter is probably where you'll find me better, or so like interact with me most. I'm
Yeah, it
not a big
seems to
fan
be
of
your kind of
Instagram.
natural habitat, Daniel. Yeah, and obviously
Yeah,
you're going to be speaking, aren't you, at the genealogy show? So that puts your face out there for people. They can see a younger person. That's good, isn't it?
and yeah, for any of you who don't know, I'm presenting, as Johnny just
Exactly.
said there.
Pick
My
yourself up.
first
Come on.
presentation. My first presentation. Well, I said this when I was interviewing Kirsty Gray. I was kind of saying, I do and I don't kind of as my first presentation. It's my first presentation that I've done, like, but I pre-recorded it. It's not like a live one.
Sure.
So
Yeah, which is a different experience, isn't it?
yeah, I mean, so yeah, that'll always kind of be my first one. And I mean, hopefully people enjoy it and kind of can relate and have
It's first
stuff
for
to
many, I'm
add.
sure. Yeah. I
That's
did
all
my
I have.
first one about 2 years ago, so, you get into it quite quickly, potentially. I quite like it. I hate all the work you have to do to make a presentation good. But then once I've done it, I think, okay, well, that was something.
Yeah, and I'll tell everyone this for free. It actually, for anyone wondering how long it actually took me to do it,
A
I
while,
think
yeah.
it took me like actually, before I say it, how many attempts do you think I had to
Recording it.
Yeah.
You did it on the 4th attempt.
No, not even close.
Okay.
I had actually the one that went to the one that was submitted was my 17th attempt.
17th. Okay.
It took me 17 goes to do it.
I don't know how you did it, but one thing that was great for me is the conference I did before the genealogy show was called Family History Down Under, and there's someone who's involved in that and made this really cool video on how to record your PowerPoint presentation slide by slide, which sounds really weird because you have to kind of get yourself ready for each slide, but then if you mess it up, you just have to redo that slide. So I recorded that presentation. Yeah. Sure, it took me a while, but I did do the whole thing in an afternoon, the recording, whereas otherwise it would have taken me a lot longer, I'm sure. So
yeah,
tip for the future. I'll see if I can find that link and send it to you. Seriously, it was amazing for me to learn how to do that. I didn't know it was built in. I've been using PowerPoint for so long now. I didn't know how much better it got. So
yeah, I mean, first presentation, I mean, 17 goals. What is that? No.
One for each year in your life. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully, I'll say this again. Hopefully people like it. And yeah, it's an experience, if nothing more.
Exactly. Well, all these things are experiences, yeah.
Yeah. So I've gotten to the end of my ones. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to head on to the ones that people have submitted to me via Twitter.
Yeah.
And if anyone, again, I'll say this again, if anyone watching wants to get their questions in, please do, because I don't know when you'll be able to ask them next. So, right, this is my third time doing this, and I guarantee it'll take me, I don't know how long to do this. So I have to do that, and I have to do this, and I have to do that. I know that. Then, no, that one. I'll get there. So, question 1 that people have sent in when it actually loads in. And there we go. So, what's the next tool you plan to introduce?
Oh, well, that's a good question. Yeah, I don't know. What is the next tool I plan to introduce? Have I got anything up my sleeve? I have got something up my sleeve that I've built but I haven't launched yet, which is it's not that exciting, but you know, when you shared some DNA with someone, I guess in a sense is maybe more useful for people whose parents haven't tested. But if you've got somebody who matches a set of siblings, I've got a tool that will let you put the segments in that each person shares with the person shares with each sibling, and then it will try and estimate how much they would have shared with your parent. So if you imagine, 3 siblings who are in their 70s, their parent hasn't tested, it's looking for sometimes siblings might share a segment with someone and it's the same segment every time. It's like a 40 centimorgan chunk of DNA that you all just happen to have got. Whereas sometimes there'll be different segments, and that actually amounts to 120 segments. It's 3 different ones. So I have got a tool that will help you use those types of matches better. Okay.
Well, you heard it here first, folks.
You did actually. Yeah. Forgotten about that one.
I'm assuming that's the first time you actually announced that.
I think it might be. I think you got yourself an exclusive there, Daniel. Yeah.
Oh, well, there you go. 12 people. You're the first ones to have heard.
I don't know when I'm going to release it, but yeah. Good.
Well, it's out there. It's been said. It'll probably make news now. So now the next one was 2 people that asked kind of fairly similar questions, so I just kind of stuck them together. So have you ever thought about partnering DNA Painter with a larger genealogy platform, or do you prefer or see advantages of keeping its independence? And the kind of similar one to that was, would you ever sell DNA Painter to one of the big commercials?
Yeah, it's a good question. The obvious advantage of doing it would be that a lot more things could be automated. So I don't have the actual DNA in DNA Painter. I have the coordinates. So I know that you match someone between this point and this point on chromosome 1. I don't have the actual DNA. If I did, there would be more things I could do, and that would be lovely. But obviously, there's only a few platforms, and they're all huge. And some of them know who I am, and I know who they are. But it's never, a conversation has never got that far. And the other advantage, obviously, from my point of view, is I'm a one-person company who has to maintain, what's now quite a big platform and keep it up and keep it safe. So that is big. On the other hand, it's quite nice being able to do what on earth I want. It's quite nice to be able to say, well, you know what, next I'm going to try and really push this bit. So earlier this year, I spent absolutely a ridiculous number of weeks on this tool called Dimensions, which effectively lets you take your direct line and add different facets to it. So you can add a dimension that is the age at death, and it will automatically figure out when everyone died, and then you can suddenly see a kind of color-coded version of your fan chart according to when people died or where they were born, or any other thing you think up. So that wasn't something that the community was clamoring for. It was just something I wanted to do. And if I was working for another company, I wouldn't have been able to do that. They'd have been said, work on this DNA thing. So I do enjoy the freedom. Would I ever sell it? If someone proposed something, I would certainly consider it on its merits. Yeah, but there's benefits also of being where I am.
Fair enough. So, and the last one to that one was, when using the centimorgan, I hope I said that right, centimorgan tool, how do I know the difference between a second cousin match and a half first cousin once removed or half second cousin match? I'm looking for paternal grandfather and have many matches in 2 different families who are cousins.
Right. Well, the first thing you probably do is you would make a note of the number of centimorgans that you've entered, and then you'd click on each of those relationships and you'd have a look at the histogram, which is this kind of distribution chart showing you the kind of curve of the reported centimorgan amounts for each of those relationships. So maybe for a second cousin, you might be just on the shoulder of the curve and not really in the peak, so it might be less likely, and it might be more towards the middle of some of the other ones. Then taking it further, you could potentially use the what are the odds tool, which is where if you've got different cousins and you can fit them together in a tree, you can then see how you might fit into that tree. So that's a kind of extension of that tool. I mean, how do you know? Well, the whole point, I suppose, is that you can't really know without genealogical evidence. You can't suddenly say, well, 50 centimorgans equals this relationship. That's not how inheritance works. But you can look at clues that might, just looking at those histograms might give you a lead on that, depending on how many centimorgans we're talking about. And then if you have the matches, I would certainly recommend what are the odds. Okay.
Fair enough. So
very good.
Those were the ones. I'm just gonna. Oh, dearie me. Right. Hopefully that stops doing that. I hope. Oh, it did! Hooray! I actually got it to work.
Good job.
And one that came through the comments was, I'm going to read this because for podcast stuff. I'm trying to identify my 3rd great grandfather, and I have access to 4 descendants of my 2nd great grandfather in 3 generations: me, my mom, her brother, and their aunt.
Yeah.
And I've been painting one map by using all 4 of them to find common segments with more matches, with more distant matches. Is there a better tool for identifying just the mystery man segments?
Okay, so I hope I've understood this properly. I think what we're saying here is that we know. Okay, so you've been able to narrow down the segments that must include some segments from this mystery person. But it might also have some people from the 3rd great grandmother as well, I suppose. Is there a better tool? Well, it just depends on your matches. If you were able to cluster the matches and have maybe a wider array of matches who are descended from this particular line, that could be more powerful because you've probably got more people who you can identify as matches than you have segments, because you can't get segments from the ancestry DNA people. So a more classic way of trying to solve this would be to keep doing kind of divide and conquer with the clusters. So you do your clustering, so you do the Leeds method, or you run a cluster on MyHeritage or all these other sites. You start to cross out the ones that definitely don't apply, and then you're left with some matches, and then you try to link those matches together into a tree, and the assumption then is, because you've already ruled out the other clusters, you've got some clusters maybe that you think are on, in different lines. Potentially, you then try and fit yourself into that tree, and you find them out that way. With segments, I guess your best bet, if you've got a bunch of segments, then I guess you're just going to be madly researching the trees of all those people who share those segments, which can be rather frustrating. Just to loop back to our conversation earlier, because if you're serious about genealogy, one of the first things you'll find is that most people who have a tree are not as serious about genealogy as you, so they won't have done it either, far enough back, or they'll have made mistakes. So it's really tricky trying to get people that far back. Is there a better tool? The better tool is to just do it with more and more matches if you can link them in a tree, but there's also nothing wrong with that approach. In both cases, what you're doing is sifting through your matches and just narrowing it down to the ones that you can infer must be relevant to this mystery ancestor. So they're both valid.
Right. Well, thank you for that. That was the only kind of, I think that was all the questions that came in. I'm going to pull this comment up, and this is relating to the new tool which you exclusively announced. That's awesome. I am so looking forward to that tool. I paid my father using his descendants instead of him. So, and also the person who commented with that question saying thank you.
Very welcome.
So, I think I'd say that's a good point to end. So thank you everyone for coming, and Jonny, thank you so much for being a guest with me. Like the work you've done is awesome, and I mean just kind of how vast it's become in the years that you've done it is what's the word? Impressive. There we go. I eventually found the word. But I mean, it's only going to keep growing. And in all fairness, it's only going to keep getting bigger and better. I can only.
Hopefully, yeah. I better get a new database server then. Yeah.
Anyway, thank you everyone for watching, and stay tuned for my next guest. And to those who will eventually listen to this as an audio version, thank you for listening, and I will see you next time. So, bye everyone.
Thanks everyone. Take care.